If there's one thing that the Five Nights at Freddy's series is known for, other than its mess called lore, it's its terrible working conditions. In many of the games, you play as a security guard working in a rundown pizza restaurant full of 8-foot tall animatronics who have nothing better to do than to brutally murder you. Now, what if these restaurants weren't in the brain-dead universe of Fnaf, where they can't even find 5 dead kids in a restaurant, but instead ours? How would Fazbears Entertainment hold up against OSHA? For you who don't know, OSHA is a workers' safety and rights organization and stuff. They're known for the OSHA violation, which is when a workplace puts a worker in danger because they don't follow a laundry list of rules they have. In our hypothetical scenario, I'll be inspecting the locations of Fnaf 1 and 2, Fazbear Frights of Fnaf 3, the sister location Bunker from Sister Location, and the pizzeria from Fnaf Pizzeria Simulator. I'm not including any spin-offs, and the others aren't here because FNAF 4 isn't a restaurant, it's a dying child's nightmares, or elaborate illusion torture depending on who you ask. I know nothing about Help Wanted, and I don't own a VR headset, so I can't judge that one. And Security Breach plus Ruin is giant and would need its own video dedicated to it. Plus, Security Breach has been done before. I'll be judging each establishment on gameplay only, so books will not be considered. I'll be looking through all the in-game backstories and gameplay to find stuff that violates the OSHA regulations, and I'll issue a citation or violation if something's found. A citation is an OSHA violation that does not put people in any risk, although it will not be used in this video because everything here puts people in danger. I also get to issue the fines based on severity, with the max I can give being 14,502. I'll also be using Markiplier footage for the video since I think it'd be a lot more entertaining than just me. I'll have all the videos used linked in the description. With that said, let's see which FNAF location has the most OSHA violations. Alright, FNAF 1, the game that started it all. To get the elephant out of the room, working with 8-foot tall possessed animatronics isn't directly stated to be a violation. Shocker, I know. But I think we can dock some points off this location for hiring untrained security guards to guard the animatronics. This falls under having general requirements for all of the machines. Next, there's nothing about 5 child corpses being stuffed inside the animatronics for almost 10 years, but I feel pretty comfortable calling this a toxic and hazardous substance. Would you argue a rotting pretzel child corpse is not toxic? With those two out of the way, we can get the location for not having a portable fire suppression device and having no medical services or first aid in any way, due to neither a fire extinguisher nor a first aid kit being found on premises. Although you could argue there's one in the kitchen, but knowing Fazbears Entertainment, it's unlikely. The only other thing I could find was hazard communication, since Fazbears Entertainment knew how dangerous the animatronics were, but didn't let employees know, putting them in extreme danger. I'm not sure if I should add a lack of emergency exits here, since the office does have 2 doors right next to the entrance, but if you're under attack with animatronics at the door, you wouldn't be able to get out anyway. And besides, what is Fazbears Entertainment gonna do with a few extra $1,000s? As much as I want to dock it for not having fire prevention plans, we don't know if the FNAF 1 and 2 locations were burned, as that's just a theory. Again, so I'm willing to let it slide. For now. It's also notable that the pizzeria has hazardous waste removal, since Phone Guy says that should a body be found, they will bleach the area and replace the carpets, so at least they do have some standards for cleaning the place. Now if only they could find the bodies. And just to make things a bit worse for Fazbear, machine guarding and toxic substances are repeated violations, as we know other security guards have worked here in the past and have likely died. I'm not sure about hazard communication though, so it gets let off the hook. Repeated violations get charged up to 10 times more, so this little scandal will definitely put a dent in Fazbears Entertainment's pockets. FNAF 1 gets off with a surprising 6 violations and a $325,000 fine. However, I'm giving Fazbear the benefit of the doubt, and according to my research, if the violation hurts 10 or less employees, the fine is reduced by 80%. Considering there probably hasn't even been 10 employees, they'll be getting the reduction. In reality, this restaurant gets a $65,000 fine. That's still a lot, but we'll get to some bigger ones. FNAF 2 is roughly the same, with repeated unqualified machine guarding and toxic substances since the withered animatronics have a child's body inside of them. There's still no hazard communication, no fire extinguisher, and no first aid kit. and there's no entrance that I could find, so it loses both emergency exit plans and having to friggin' exit. I'm not really sure if the pizzeria has an exit, but the cams don't show one, so I'm assuming it's far away from the office. I'm also guessing the Freddy mask hasn't been properly sanitized before going onto your face, so I'm docking points for that. Outside of this, I really can't get Fnaf 2 with anything else. I thought Mangle being assembled by engineers with the IQ of toddlers was something I could get them with, but we don't know if they were unqualified, or if William Afton got a little bit too drunk before writing the instructions. Fnaf 2 keeps all the same violations from Fnaf 1, and manages to one-up its already terrible conditions, with 8 violations and a roughly $73,000 fine. For the first finale of Fnaf 3, we get to be a security guard for a crappy Fazbear-themed haunted house. Right off the bat, we can charge Fazbear for toxic substances, as there's a 30-year-old corpse right in the walls. We can't get them for machine guarding though, as they didn't know Springtrap was in the building, and it seems like the animatronic parts strewn across the place are just shells, not full animatronics. But what we can really hit this place with is the fire. We know that Fazbear Frights gets burned down, and it's even to the point where our makeshift foam guy says that it's a very big fire hazard. And with that knowledge, we can assume there is no fire suppression device. However, there is an exit, as we know the protagonist survived the fires since he set it off, although I'm not sure whether I can get the location for not having an emergency exit. It's also likely that there's no sprinkler system, as the ending newspaper article states that the place was burned to the ground. Having an entire building burned to the ground seems pretty serious in my opinion, so we're definitely not letting this slide. This also means that there's no fire detection system, so now there are even more fire-related issues. Another easy thing to fault is the crappy ventilation, which literally causes animatronic phantoms to form because of how much you're hallucinating. Also, you see that water there? There is water pooling on the floor without a wet floor sign, so that's another small fine. There's likely no sanitation of the area, and considering this place was abandoned for 30 years, it'd be pretty awful and unclean. We can assume that Fazbears Entertainment are still cheapskates, and don't have a first aid kit. We can also fault them for crappy wiring, as a simple misfire caused the entire place to light up like a Christmas tree. Surprisingly, this rundown crap show of a workplace only has 9 violations, which is somehow barely worse than Fnaf 2. However, the mostly lack of severity only lands this establishment with our lowest total yet, 9,400. Alright, sister location. The game I know the least about. We're playing as Michael Afton, who is going down into his dad's evil bunker for reasons. It's also a job, where people work. But not for long. I'm just gonna go through this by each night. Night 1, no alternate exit plan as there's only one way in or out, and it's this crummy elevator. There's also no first aid kit and in a place with sharp metal everywhere. That's a huge risk. I don't see any fire extinguishers or sprinklers either, and if there aren't sprinklers, I doubt there's a fire detection system, so that's 4 easy violations. You're also working with machinery you likely weren't trained for since you're supposed to be some random schmuck off the streets. We already have 6 violations on the first night. Wow. These were all general things, so future nights will have more specific violations. Night 2. The only things I found were sanitary concerns as you crawl on the floor and hide under a desk. The lack of electrical safety in the break room is also a major concern. 2 violations. Night 3. Unqualified machine usage is all I could find from the Disassembling Funtime Freddy segment. Night 4. Surprisingly nothing, since you're just stuck in a suit the whole time. And finally, Night 5, which keeps everything from previous nights, although we can add repeated unqualified machine usage. We also know that the unqualified machine usage results in death, giving Fazbear a pretty hefty fine, as well as the 2 technicians who were hanging around, which gives us another toxic substance violation. All in all, Fnaf sister location gets a hefty 9 violations, about the same as Fnaf 2, except all of these are so much more deadly. Somehow though, this death trap of a workplace isn't even the worst place, only getting roughly $48,000 fine. How? Our final workplace for today is the Fnaf 6 location, the False Pizzeria. This place is more of a health hazard to customers rather than workers. It's also important to note that there's only one worker. One person runs and operates this entire thing, so it'll get a pretty decent discount. But even then, there's quite a lot that our solo manager does wrong. Sadly, since this video is focused on OSHA, we can't get any of the obvious consumer health hazards. Although, now that I think about it, that would be a pretty good video. Like and subscribe if you want that to happen. Anyway, we can hit the establishment with a lack of a first aid kit, lack of a fire suppression device, and likely a lack of sprinklers, since the place burns down in the ending. Which ties into a lack of a fire detection system. Pretty par for the course, right? We can also assume that there are no alternate exit routes, so if the main one gets blocked, you're pretty screwed. There is ventilation though, since the player's office is in them, although they don't seem to be the best since you can overheat pretty easily, and there are 4 deadly animatronics roaming them. We can also assume that the vents aren't properly sanitized, since at least 2 rotting corpses are in there and trying to murder you. I'm also willing to bet that the owner of the Fazbear location doesn't have proper machine training, which when dealing with 8-foot-tall murder robots is something kind of important. And that's it, no other problems, not even electrical ones, which are pretty big in the series. We end off Fnaf 6 with 8 violations, which seems to be what most of these get. With these violations, we give the Fnaf 6 location a $12,000 fine, which is the second lowest so far. Alright then, on to the ranking. The least dangerous Fnaf location is Fnaf 3. While having the most hazards of any location, this place isn't very dangerous, with most of the hazards just needing a mop or some duct tape. Next is Fnaf 6 Pizzeria Simulator, which has a lot of the standard problems, but gets away with a lot of them since there's only one person that has ever worked here. This makes machine guarding and usage one of the largest fines basically non-existent. Fnaf 5 sister location is also surprisingly not the most deadly, since this is the game where, you get your organs scooped out in a good ending. I really don't know how this place isn't getting a larger fine. It is kinda tied for second though, since it has more violations than Fnaf 1, however, it has a smaller fine. The original Fnaf 1 is extremely deadly, missing a lot of the stuff you'd expect from a job safety-wise. Everything about this place screams take out my frontal lobe, placing it in the second place spot. Barely winning is Fnaf 2, with a ton of violations with high degrees of severity. You will die here. There is no other way to put it. Do not work here.
Was that the bite of 87?